we recommend that you watch the movie before watching our episodes. Welcome to yet another perspective. We here are all about cinema and psychology. For those of you who are new here, we pick one movie each month and discuss the psychological elements of that movie. Last time we spoke about Hera Fairy, and this time we're back again with the comedy from the late 90s. This one is all about the quirkiness and eccentricities which we find in all of us, which is why I'm really excited to talk about this one. We are talking about As Good as It Gets. So, Swati, last time we spoke about Hera Fairy, we spoke about Sham, Raju, and Babu Rao and their characters. We saw that there was a lot of pain in their personal stories and in their backgrounds, but the director and the screenwriter was still able to make the movie a comedy. There was a lightness about the film, which is similar with As Good as It Gets, right? Because the character of Melvin and Carol and Simon, which are the three central characters in the movie, their backstories have a lot of baggage and burden and heaviness. The movie yet has like a very light air about it. So, what do you think comedies are actually?
It's, I think, a way to present a thought. So I can say the same thing with humor. I can say the same thing with pathos. I can say the same thing with angst. So whether it falls in that place where I'm just able to look at it and make other people laugh with it, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm laughing with, but other people are able to laugh at it. They use situations a little more trickily, differently, rather than in the very raw realism thing saying, oh my God, pain is pain. So I think comedy is just that little different way of presenting the same kind of pain. So you can't have a perfect thing and laugh at it. You laugh at somebody who's fallen केले के छिलके पे. You don't laugh कि वो बहुत ढंग से सीधा सीधा चला गया, right? So you're still picking on pain, but with an angle where you can laugh at life.
Which is what stand-up comedy also is invariably, right? Like comics talk about things which are painful, but in a way that can be relatable for the other person. So comedies make it very easy to relate to the audience. Do you think that's true?
Yes, and I think that need for saying from real life when you're looking at so much pain and chaos, you just go and you're able to laugh about the same thing. So you identify with it a lot more without having to say that you're coming out crying off the place.
Right, so, it's more acceptable to laugh at something painful than to be able to get sad or say it in a very heavy tone. But movies like that also exist. Do you think this movie would have done better if it was not made into a comedy?
I wouldn't want to change anything about it. So if you're asking me to visualize, could it have been different? I think with the cast and the narration, I'm not able to think about it differently.
Right. Swati, what do you think this movie is about? We know that the central character Melvin is a distasteful person. No one likes him. He's always overimposing himself on others, and he's not wanted in any space. When he's asked to not come back to the restaurant, there's like a big applause in the restaurant that he was finally thrown out and he'll not be put up with. There's a lot of hate around him. Like he doesn't have any sort of acceptance. So is this movie about toxic people? We speak about toxicity a lot in today's culture. Do you think this is representative of that? Is this toxicity?
I don't like the word toxic, but yes, because today's culture, we use that word quite a lot. So would we want to look at this movie saying it's talking about two worlds? Melvin as a very toxic person, and in contrast to that, Carol and Simon, who are very likable characters, and in this particular contrast, his toxicity stands out a lot more, right? Although if I would want to still take the discussion forward, it would be about different defense mechanisms that they are using to work with their world. Some socially acceptable, which are the way Carol and Simon are coping up with life, and which are socially unacceptable, the way Melvin is coping up with life.
Right.
There is this discussion that three of them have in the car, saying that all three of us have pain to get over, right? And that discussion. What makes Melvin's character a little different from the other two is not maybe the concept of the toxicity that we are talking about. We can say he's the toxic person, you want to make a boundary, keep him out of your life. But we are talking about somebody who is looking at their life pain differently, right? So we'll go back to the discussion in the car when they are traveling to Baltimore, where they are sharing their pain stories from their childhood. And in that, Melvin ends up saying, it's not that we three have problems to get over with. It's that somebody else has it better. And that anger you have because somebody else has it better. So what makes Melvin a lot more unlikable is because of the addition of envy he has. He's not looking at his pain. He's looking at how the world has it better. So he's angrier compared to Carol and Simon. Right. So if you're talking about toxic people, they could just be people who are a little more angry at life rather than adaptable towards life. Right. So we'll try and not use the word toxic, but yeah, he would be somebody who is toxic and you want to keep out because he brings in anger and envy also in his personality.
Right. Swati, when you were talking about defense mechanisms in regards to toxicity, something was coming to my mind, like how do you differentiate between disorder and defense mechanism? Are disorders also defense mechanism? Because in the movie we see that Melvin suffers from OCD, so he engages in these ritualistic practices and exercises, and when he's feeling a little bit better, when he's feeling easier with himself, he forgets to lock the door, for instance, and he walks not on the side of the road when she says that this is not going to work. So he's able to manage that. So what is the difference between disorder and defense mechanism? Because somewhere disorders are also a manifestation of a defense mechanism.
So it's only a matter of degree, not of kind.
Okay.
Right. So we all use defense mechanisms, and if at all we are using a combination of different defense mechanisms, then it becomes a healthy mix. Because it takes our mind a little time to cope and adapt to the newer situation life keeps throwing at us, right? But when we make certain things very characteristic and we limit ourselves to a particular space, then it will be called a disorder. So if we look at Melvin's characteristic is where he's using two defense mechanisms. One is sublimation, another is that of anxiety. So sublimation in the sense that he's capable of writing about those emotions which otherwise he's been shown not to be an emotional person at all. He's somebody who's able to talk about love. Okay, whereas Simon tells him, you love nothing. But he sold 62 books and very popularly sold things around emotion. So he's able to sublimate a part of all those emotions and use it in writing rather than real life. And another one is anxiety. He uses compulsive tics to cope up with all the anxious thoughts. So one very classic one would be using number of times to lock a door, or not to stamp on a crack and always walk on more cleaner surfaces. Otherwise, the anxiety just goes up. Now, because he's using only this one and two kinds, it becomes a disorder. If he was using more range of defense mechanisms and learning how to get over it, some resolution, some learning, moving on, it wouldn't be falling in the category of disorder. So anxiety is just a feeling. When a lot of thoughts and feelings come together, that's anxiety. But when you're not able to deal with what is the source of it, and you're using compulsions to take care of it. For example, he to wear his shoes also, he taps thrice before he wears his shoes. Right? So he has these certain compulsions, the way to deal with life. So sublimation and compulsion are two defense mechanisms, and when used exclusively, they become a disorder.
Also, what is the difference between creature of habit and a disorder, right? Because creature of habits, when we become so habitual to our routines, we also tend to do some things in a loop, which is also something that we see in OCD, like you're stuck in a thought loop or a behavior loop, which is also true for creatures of habit, right? So what's the difference there?
So, what can be dismissed as an eccentricity and it is not impacting your life, your productivity, you're being yourself, and it's not impacting or polluting the other people around you, it could just be a matter of habit. But anything which is causing a handicap, for example, his social adjustment is a huge handicap. The kind of impact he leaves around and the effect he's having on other people is damaging. So when there is an effect on everyday life of a detrimental character, it is called a disorder. If it is just one of those things that person has a habit of shaking their leg, it's not disturbing anybody, right? It can be a matter of habit.
So why should people put up with Melvin? We spoke about, let's not call him toxic, but since you're saying that his behavior is detrimental to other people's existence and imposing on their space, why should people put up with him? Like, why?
People don't need to. But what we need to know that anything different will bring about change. Whatever we are used to will not bring about change. So people like Melvin will be able to create miracles of a kind which somebody that you're used to on an everyday basis. For example, Carol will not be able to bring about a miracle in somebody's life. She's a lot more tolerant, she's very polite, she's very friendly, but she doesn't feel she has the resources or the need enough to go out of her way to help anybody. At the same time, she doesn't end up attracting anybody to end up helping her in a manner that she's struggling with her son. So everybody is supportive, everybody is kind, but nothing changes.
That was going to be my next question. Like, what do you think is the importance of toxic people? Let's not say toxic, people like Melvin in our lives, and why does the world need them?
Because the necessity is finally the mother of invention, right? They are so focused on their own needs and not letting go of those particular needs that they'll be able to invent and innovate a lot more, right? So Melvin thought about it saying Carol needs to come back to work. The need is very simple. The need is very selfish for all you want to call it. But that pushes him to go talk to his publisher and get her husband to come to Carol's house, right? Who else would do that, right? So a lot of times people whom we want to dismiss as selfish, self-centered, because their need is so predominant that they're able to create a kind of environment which otherwise, if you see in Hindi movies, there's this word saying ki ye sharifo ka mohalla hai. So nobody will raise a voice, right? So at times it needs somebody different, somebody who's an outlaw, somebody who's crazy enough to bring about change. So you need people like Melvin. One, as a mirror, because no good friend will give you a feedback that he does. Second, because that would still bring about change and miracles.
That's an interesting insight, Swati. I believe in the corporate world, people who bring change are called disruptors. Is that that would be similar to what we see in society with people like Melvin?
Yeah, possibly.
Right?
Yeah.
Thanks for that insight, Swati. This has been great. We'll come back next week with another topic from As Good As It Gets. Next time, we're going to talk about the importance and the significance of other central characters in the movie. Till then, keep watching movies.